Hey everyone, Delilah here from DelilahIris.com. Welcome to my baby unicorn skeleton sewing tutorial. These felt cuties make for an excellent Halloween season craft or to give as a gift to your favorite spooky, skeleton-loving friend. Making felt animals is a fantastic introduction to making your own stuffed animals. I'm here to walk you through the entire project step by step. To create this fun Halloween season craft, I actually created a skeleton sketch over my already existing baby unicorn sewing pattern. I did draft a final printable PDF pattern and even an SVG cutting file. If you're a member of my Patreon sewing squad, you'll get a copy of that pattern free. To start our project, we will cut all of our sewing pattern pieces from felt. My favorite way to cut small pieces is by taping the pattern directly to the felt, then trimming carefully by hand with some small, sharp detail scissors. Match together the two main body pieces of the unicorn and make a small cut at the base of the back of the ears. The purpose of this is to curl the ears forward, but just leave it as is for now. For now, we'll sketch the skeleton pieces into place by top stitching with a running stitch. This may take a bit of time as you'll stitch the entire skeleton into place on both sides of the unicorn body pattern pieces. Consult the pattern to figure out where each of the skeleton bones belong. Match the body pieces together again to prepare to install some eyes. By poking a pin through both pattern pieces, you'll ensure the eye is in the same exact spot on both sides of the unicorn. Here, I'm preparing to install safety eyes, but you could easily embroider your eyes or even use tiny buttons or beads. To install safety eyes, I am creating a small hole to insert the eye post, then fitting a small washer on the back to hold the eye in place. Now to go back and curl those ears forward. Place a stitch or two to the inside of the felt to hold them into place. I like to keep my thread hidden by only stitching halfway through the thickness of the felt. This will ensure that the stitches don't show from the outside. Next, we'll stitch some small detail seams to the underbody pattern piece. Hold the pattern piece in your hand and fold a leg forward to create a fold right at the base of the leg. Stitch across the top of the fold. The purpose is to hold in excess felt and keep the legs folding forward. Repeat this step to all four legs. Match the underbody piece to one side of the unicorn body and pin into place at the legs. Knot your thread and begin sewing at the back of the unicorn. We'll be stitching our edges together with a small, tight blanket stitch or whip stitch. Sew along the edges of the felt, moving past both legs and ending at the chest. Knot your thread at the inside of the unicorn and trim the excess thread. Then match the opposite unicorn body piece into place and pin at the legs once again. Begin sewing again at the back of the unicorn, just above where the tail would sit. Stitch the edges together again as before, moving down the back of the horse, along the legs, and back to the chest once again. Continue stitching past the chest until you reach just about the tip of the muzzle. Here we'll match the front of the face pattern piece into place. Stitch this piece into place along one side of the face. When you reach the ear, switch to a running stitch and back to a whip stitch or blanket stitch once you're behind the ear. Sadly, I forgot to record this part, but I promise you'll see a better example when we stitch the second ear into place on the other side of the unicorn. If you're stumped, feel free to skip ahead and then come back. Otherwise, stitch to the end of the neck and knot your thread. Next, we'll begin stuffing the legs just a bit. Ball up small pieces of stuffing to push to the bottom of the legs. You'll need a small tool such as a chopstick. I actually buy lollipop sticks to stuff smaller animals, or even toothpicks. Add some chenille wire to the legs, pipe cleaners. Hold the wire up to the outside of the leg to find just the right shape to fit inside your unicorn. Insert the wire into the unicorn, pushing down into the legs. Continue stuffing all 4 legs with small bits of stuffing, then moving on to larger bits to lightly stuff the body. Return to sewing at the front of the face, stitching the opposite side of the face into place this time. As promised, here's where we switch to a running stitch to safely stitch past the ear. Switch back to a blanket or a whip stitch until just about the bottom of the neck. We'll want to leave a space open to finish stuffing the rest of our little unicorn. You'll want to fully stuff the face and the body before sewing the last little opening shut. When it's time to finally tie off the last stitches, I like to hide the last threads among the seams. I send the needle along the seam and trim the last thread, ending far from where I knotted it off. Now to sew some bat wings. Start by knotting your thread and begin stitching at the very tip of the wing. We'll be sewing some chenille wire into the top of the wing to create some posability. I like to secure the wire to the wing by, again, sewing through the thickness of the felt to hold the... I like to sew the wire in place, again, by sewing through the actual thickness of the felt so the stitches won't show on the outside. I'm only sending my needle halfway through the actual width of the felt. I suppose you could choose to glue it instead if you like. Once the wire is in place, match both wing pieces together and begin stitching, again using a blanket or a whip stitch. Next, we'll create a unicorn horn. Knot your thread at the base of the horn, fold it in half, and then stitch upward to the tip. Send the needle back through the seams and out from the base of the horn. Stuff the very tip of the horn, then thread some embroidery floss and knot at the end. Send the embroidery floss threaded needle out through the tip of the horn. Stuff the horn full, then wrap the embroidery floss around the horn, securing in place with tiny stitches along the seam. When you reach the base of the horn, send the floss out the underside of the base of the horn. Split the floss and tie a knot. Trim off the excess thread. You'll want to trim the embroidery thread, but leave your sewing thread hanging. Pin the horn into place on the unicorn's forehead. Send the sewing needle straight down through the head and out underneath the chin. This particular stitch will hold the horn firmly into place. Send the needle back up through the head and begin stitching the horn into place, moving the thread back and forth across the base of the horn. Next, we'll sew a mane into place using a back stitch. Here I'm using a really silky wool roving, but you could use some wool yarn or embroidery thread or anything that you have on hand that you think would look pretty for a mane. Next, we'll create a tail and sew that into place. I created this tail by taking a small piece of my main material and tying a knot around a bigger clump of the same material. Knot your thread at the back of the unicorn and then sew the tail into place by sending several stitches through the knot created on your tail materials. you've secured the tail, knot your thread and hide your last stitches. On to our very last step, we will knot our black thread into place and sew our bat wings in place. Here you're really just top stitching back and forth through the body and then onto the top of the wings, over and over, back and forth until they feel like they're steady in place. And then knot your thread underneath the wings where it's hidden and trim the excess. And that's it. You've made the most adorable baby skeleton unicorn. I do hope you've enjoyed this project. Like and subscribe for more tutorials.